I am an international student personally. I'm from Brazil, so I assume all of you are international students too. Yeah, okay, cool. Well, I'm a senior at Babson College in Boston. Are you guys seniors, juniors, freshmen?
Sophomore.
Sophomore?
Graduated.
Graduated, okay, cool. So to tell you a little about myself, I'm a senior at Babson, like I said. I moved from Brazil in 2009, and since summer of sophomore year, I've had a couple internship opportunities through the CTP program, which is aligned with my school curriculum. So I've applied for internship opportunities that are related to my field of study, and they've been in big companies, small advertising agencies, startups. So yeah, I'm glad to share my experiences with you today and answer questions. And we have our awesome guest speakers that have stories to tell, and they'll definitely answer your questions as well. So we'll start with them. They'll introduce themselves, talk to us about their experiences. Then we'll move on to answering a couple questions, just talk in general about the transition, the visa processes, the job application, the paperwork, everything. And then we'll open the floor for questions, any questions that you guys might have. So yeah, you guys want to start?
My name is Goodman. I'm an immigration lawyer. I used to work at a small firm, then I worked at a big firm, and then I started my own firm. I work a lot with students. A lot of them are creatives, so I guess in that way I differ a little bit from our other panelists, but I think that the legal issues and their narratives will sort of help you guys along.
Yes, my name is Clement. I'm a designer at Behance. I don't know if you know Behance. You know? Okay, cool. So you're all creative, right? And so I'm from France. I moved in 2000 to the US. I had 2 internships before I actually got a full-time job and visa. And I went back to France a couple times before actually settling in the US. So I'm glad to share my story as well and help you guys go through this process. It's not always easy.
Indeed. Yeah, definitely not an easy process, but my name is Sekiya Dorsett. I'm from NBCUniversal. I work at Oxygen, writing producer. I moved to the US in 2001 and got asylum, and now I'm living here. So I can tell you about the do's and the don'ts and all those things that I wish I had done before I settled in.
Alright, so to all of you that walked in, thanks for coming. Let me go over again. My name is Mirella. I'm the moderator, international student at Babson in Boston. Currently interning under the CTP program. This is Amanda Goodman. She is an immigration attorney. Do you guys want to just again your name so that the people that...
Yeah, so my name is Clement and I'm a designer at Behance and I'm from France.
Sekiya Dorsett, NBCUniversal from the Bahamas.
So I think that before we go into the details of the different types of authorization and visa and paperwork and stuff, let's talk about the job search, right? And the application processes and what it takes to get a job in the creative industry, right? So I think we all have different experiences to share. I personally found that a lot of the work that you have to do is kind of on your own. Because, of course, every college has their career center where you can go and talk to career advisors, and they'll definitely help you build your resume. But it's mostly up to you to go out there and meet people and talk to them. And in being a creative, the most important part of your application is showcasing your work and what you've done, because it's not really enough to just type on a Word document like your resume and then just send it to your employer and expect them to know. They want to see a portfolio. They want to see what you've done. So why don't we just talk about you guys who definitely have more experience, share what was your first position in the U.S., what you think you learned the most in that first experience in flying, like how you put together your resume and your portfolio and your work to get that first position that you were trying to get.
Right. So yeah, my first experience was an internship at Firstborn. I don't know if you guys know Firstborn. It's like a digital advertising company in New York. And I basically had a very, very small portfolio at this time. So I sent around like a ton of letters in the US and in different countries. And just sending resumes doesn't work because everyone wants to see your work and you get hired just because of the work. So what I learned at Firstborn is that just really like crafting amazing projects and working on the projects that you know you're going to be able to showcase better. And I would say that if you're working on projects that you're not going to be proud of or you're not going to be able to showcase on your portfolio, it's almost useless. Because then you want to apply for another job in another company, you're not going to be able to show this work. So to me, my first experience at Firstborn was super important because it helped me build my portfolio. And then like second time in the US and third time it was super easy because the portfolio was there. It was online on many, many websites. And then you start getting calls from people that see your work. So yeah, my first advice would be to always work on projects that you're going to be able to showcase better.
You are competing with students that live here and they are already authorized to work. So, you know, when it comes down to the fact of hiring someone that we have to go through a long process for, whether it's an H visa or, you know, an O visa, or if we're gonna hire this person that is already approved, you know, there's a big chance. So I would say really it's about, like you said, crafting your work, honing your work, and making the connections with every and any person. My first job came because I took an internship with a documentary company, and I did not know that that girl was going to work at NBCUniversal like a year later. And it was because of her that I got my foot in the door. So I would say whatever you can do to network and get yourself out there, and really just hone your craft. You know, take free jobs, take an internship, take free jobs on the side. Just definitely beef up what you're presenting. Because I know we're going to talk a little bit later about the O visa. That's an artist visa. And in that regard, you have to show how exceptional you are, that you're even at the level to receive such a visa. So if you start now, while you're in school, beefing up what you have, and really getting it together, collaborate with your co-students, make your own company. I mean, the sky really is the limit, but you have to beef it up.
And I think that's very important because we were talking together right before that it was hard for international students or people who work in the US to work on side projects because the visa just don't allow to work for other companies. So I think it's a good idea to start like school projects and like even fake projects. It doesn't matter at this point to build your portfolio. It's a very good idea.
Yeah, so another great thing to make use of is your online presence, right? So even if, let's say, so what he meant by being hard for you to get jobs is because as an international student, you have an option to get an internship through a CTP program, but that has to be aligned with your college curriculum. So it has to be related to your field of study. You can't just get freelance jobs, which would be great because as a creative, it helps you build your portfolio, right? Like, even if it's jobs you can volunteer and, submit work online and get just stuff that's gonna build your portfolio, you're gonna have a lot to share with your future employers. It's a little bit harder for international students because the CTP is very limiting. So make good use of your online presence. Like, make sure that you have, like, start a blog, start building your online portfolio from now, so that when your employer looks for you, when you submit your application and they Google your name, like, you gotta have something there. If someone Googles you and you don't exist online, you don't exist, period. Like, it's very, because like Sekiya said, the competition is tough because you're competing against people who are established citizens. They don't require all the extra legwork and paperwork and stuff that they have to do to get you legally working there. So work that extra mile. Work hard to make sure that if someone Googles your name, something that you have control of is gonna appear there. Make it like, buy your name. Like I bought my domain at mirellacrespi.com. It's not expensive, it's like 18 bucks. So you own your presence online and you have full control of that, which is great because when your future employer Googles you, you know exactly and you have crafted what they're gonna see, right? So you have that working in your favor.
And what's even cheaper than buying a domain is signing up for Behance. Obviously, I work there. So I'm biased, obviously, but it's super important because we have like super nice SEO. So if anyone Googles your name, that's going to be first result. We have more traffic than every other portfolio website, all of them combined. So it's sometimes we're like, oh, I'm not going to create an account. I'm just going to build my portfolio on my own. No one's going to see it actually because it gets no traffic. So if you can sign up for as many online portfolio websites as you can, that's a very, very good first step. And then creating your projects, making sure that you don't show everything, you just show the best and what represents you the most. And then tag your projects with great keywords, pick the right creative field so that people can find you easily, and you should be all set. And I think then you're good, you're hired.
Yeah, and just in general, make good use of social networks. Sign up for as many as you can because that contributes to your personal SEO, if we can call it that. So if you signed up, even if you don't use it, sign up for Google+, like all these accounts, that Quora, Clout, everything that helps put your first and your last name together with a profile that's going to help build your online presence is very important. So once you've gathered all of your application material to send to these places, how do you start looking, right? Like, do you guys have any advice on good resources on like places to find the jobs to start applying? How did you guys find your first positions or the ones that you have now?
Well, I mean, literally it was through another person, but I would say, don't be skeptical about actual small organizations. As an international student, you're going to get lost at an NBCUniversal. They have an HR corporate department that when it comes down to, at the end of the day, talking to, I need a visa, you're just talking to this one person that cannot control that. If you start getting jobs at smaller companies, then they have smaller HR departments. You are definitely connected with your boss. When it comes down to, I'm going to be sent home, you're talking to someone that knows you. You're talking directly to the person that can decide. There really is no big corporate umbrella policy probably at that point. So, don't be afraid of startups. Don't be afraid of those smaller boutique firms for creative design, because that can really help you in the long run, because you're going to be able to be face-to-face with someone who can negotiate for you, who you can talk about the possibilities. If you talk to Amanda and Amanda said, well, the only thing that you probably can do is an H-1 visa, then you could talk to an HR department that's smaller in general about what you could do. So definitely don't, kind of start off with internships at smaller companies, I would say.
Yeah, it's definitely, when you get an experience in a smaller setting, you build stronger networking relationships, and that's very important because you're competing against people who already naturally have networking in the US. Like if I were to find jobs at home, you have friends and family, you have people you know, who can help you out, who can talk to someone there. Here, we're completely out of our comfort zone, so you really have to work on building these strong relationships with people that are, even if they're not going to give you a job necessarily later on, they might be a good recommendation, and that's very important, someone putting in a good word for you.
I just wanted to say something about building relationships. I think in large part, everyone here when they graduate will have a year of OPT time. And I think that it's really important for you to use that time strategically, whether it's developing a relationship with a particular employer that you'd like to work with in the future. At the end of that OPT time, you would have worked with them for a year. You've developed a relationship, you've developed loyalty, you're entrenched on projects. There's a much higher likelihood that they would sponsor you to stay on rather than starting from scratch. I mean, it's important. Of course, we want to think about it from your perspective. but at the end of the day, the decision-making process is gonna be from their perspective. So if you can sell yourself that way, that's also a plus.
Yeah, so that's an interesting person stage, depending on what grade level you are now or what level on your career. But let's talk a little maybe more about the CTP, is if you're currently enrolled as a full-time student, right? And what are your options there? And then after the CPT, can you talk about the transition from CPT to OPT? And then maybe in a little more detail, what you can do in that 1 year that you're allowed to stay in the US without requiring a company to sponsor your visa. And then the transition from the OPT to an actual work visa.
Okay, that is a tall order. Okay, so curricular practical training is an allowance for you to work at an internship that's related to your field of study during your coursework. Some people choose to do that, some people don't. Once you reach a certain point, and it differs from the program that you're in and the internship that you choose, it all differs on a case-by-case basis. So I would 100% advise that you talk to your international student advisor about this, but you would be allowed to intern during your coursework. Once you hit a certain point, and again, I'd want you to confirm that with the international student advisor, it might undercut your OPT, which is the optional practical training, which is the 1 year that you should receive after your F1. Is everyone familiar with the fact that they're going to get 1 year after they graduate? So at that time, unlike any other time in your stay here, you're going to have unfettered access to the US labor market. Your employer is not going to be required to pay you a specific wage. You're not going to be required to have an employer-specific job, which means you could only work for that employer. You can freelance, you could start your own company, you could really do anything during that year that you choose, and you won't really have the ability to do that ever again until you become a green card holder. So I cannot impress upon you how important it is to use that OPT year as wisely and effectively and as aggressively as possible. Which sort of speaks to what you were saying earlier. Okay, so if you're going to transfer then and you want to change your status after your OPT, you sort of have to start working. I would suggest 3 months into your OPT, sort of narrowing down what visa is most suitable for you. I'm guessing off the top of my head from this group, it's going to be something in the JOH trajectory. I don't know how familiar you guys are with that. And H is going to be a more traditional graphic designer with a specific company, only working for that company. And O1 has an option where you can work for a few employers, or in a strictly creative field. If you want to talk about the O1, I would also defer to him. He's currently on an O1. That requires a pretty significant evidentiary showing. And then the J1 is a training-based visa. And I think those are the 3 visas that you guys would all fit into in terms of a change of status after you're no longer a student. Those changes of status I would start investigating about 3 months into your OPT. A lot of them have cyclical application procedures. So for example, with the H-1B, there's a starting date that's permissible. You can file in April and you can only start on that filing in October. So you really need to be conscious of the time required and really pre-plan.
So I think it's very important that you guys understand that this 1 year that you get is amazing, and you really need to be not only make great use of it, but you kind of have to prepare for it too, because you can't just say, okay, now I have this one great OPT year ahead of me, but I haven't networked, I haven't had any previous internship opportunity. You're gonna make your life so much harder. So make sure you're ready for that OPT year. Make use of your CPT. So get internships, or get some hands-on experience with what you can, so that you're ready for that OPT year to make the best out of it. So why don't we talk about our personal transitions into the visas that we had and the visas that we have now, because I think we're in 3 different scenarios, and Sekiya has a very interesting story about her visa. I am interning under the CPT program. I have a limit to the CPT programs that I can have until they start counting into deducting from my OPT time, right? So I need to be very careful about that as well. So make sure you're always informed, talk to your career advisors, make sure that you plan ahead and that you know which visa you're aiming for, so that you will have, like she said, the O visa requires that you show proof that you are an artist and that you have work of value. So that's something you have to work towards as well. So that's what I'm working towards. I'm working towards having a successful OPT year so that I can have a job offer with a visa sponsorship. So why don't you guys talk about it?
So I started with a J1 visa for an internship. I was coming from France, so I was not studying in the US as you guys do, which is, as you said, like super valuable to use the OPT time afterwards. So I wish I had that. I wish I could have built my company. Just a little story, I was watching the debates a few weeks ago, and they were like, oh, foreigners are going to come to the US and create jobs. And I'm like, I was laughing really hard. I was like, well, it's really hard to get hired. How am I going to build a company? Like, it's just impossible. So if you guys can do it, you should really do it. So then I had to do another J1 visa to intern at Behance, and then they offered me a full-time position, and then we transitioned to O1 visa, which requires a lot of paperwork. You have to get a lot of letters of recommendation. Your work has to be featured in magazines and books and stuff like that. And one thing you said before, when you build a relationship with an employer, it's really, really important, because I had to call all my previous employers so that they write letters saying that I worked on this project that was featured in this book. And if I didn't build like a good relationship with these people, I couldn't be here today. So it is super important that you guys like really start building relationships with companies. And then have the O1 visa that runs for 3 years. I guess I can renew afterwards.
Yeah, in 1 year.
Yeah.
And that's unlimited, unlike some of the other visa categories.
Right. So that's where I'm at.
Yes, I'm in a unique situation. I started with the J visa, I did the OPT, then I got a job, and then I was like, oh my God, it's gonna happen. But I ended up on actually applying for asylum. So I'm from the Bahamas. I don't know if you guys are from, any of you are LGBT, or if you are from a country that's less progressive in terms of like rights, of whether it's women's rights or whatever it may be. And I applied for that, and they did not grant me asylum. They actually granted me something called withholding of removal, which is probably the weirdest status that you could have in your whole life. It's sort of like you're trapped in the US. You can't go anywhere except the US. So now I'm working toward changing my status, if possible again. And that's going to be very hard from this particular status to something else, but that's my kind of...
So, in the same note, what do you guys think were your biggest challenges, like through this whole process? Was it the paperwork? Was it actually getting the job? Or was it after the job, fulfilling all the paperwork to actually be able to stay here and learn?
I think for me the biggest challenge for all of us is finding the right job that is going to have the right people that guide you through the process the right way and are going to help you all the way through. To me, like, that's the biggest challenge, because when you find these people, then they take care of everything. They have the lawyers, everyone is working for you, and it works out well. So I think that's the biggest challenge to me. And I was super lucky to find Behance. That was like really helpful.
I think the hardest job is being misinformed. You know, U.S. immigration is not something that you just Google. How to stay in the United States? That is not what you do. Do not do that.
I did.
Yes,
Well, I didn't fail.
It was a fail, exactly. Go uscis.gov. Should be the only place you find information from. That is the service of the United States. Immigration is very black and white. Once you miss one thing, it could set you back a long time. So you need to be informed from the get-go. So if you are in school now, you should visit a trusted immigration lawyer. Not the immigration lawyer that you see on the train, that's like, oh, 1-800-immigration, not that one. Someone like Amanda, who's a trusted immigration lawyer that's been through it, that can tell you 2 years from now, this is what you're going to have to do. And that you can follow up with that person and they tell you about deadlines. You have to keep track of deadlines. If you're an international student, a calendar is your friend. You need to know that in 3 months, This is what, you need to know how long it's gonna take to get a visa, first of all. Because there's always a lull between getting a work visa. And then you cannot work without it. So you really need to be well informed, and the only way you can do that is to get a trusted advisor. So you guys this is, I wish I had met you when I was going to school, because I would be set at this point. So definitely you have to follow really, really strict guidelines.
Cool. So with that in mind, Amanda, I know that you work with both employers' side as well as the individual who's trying to get the employment visa. Knowing both sides of the story, what do you think is the most important thing that us as like future employees can do to prepare for that moment when we're finally trying to get our visa?
Well, assuming that you have an employer who's willing to sponsor you, I think that, obviously I'm biased, you need a good immigration lawyer, but you also need to know your company really well. We talked about this briefly earlier. There are companies I've worked with that find this process completely overwhelming. They don't want to know anything about it. They want the applicant to do all the liaising. They don't want to hear from me. There are some companies that only want to hear from me. They want the applicant doing the work, out of it, just, employer to lawyer contact. And in this, sort of trifecta, you guys know the employer best. So you need to really speak up. Like, if they don't want to hear from a lawyer, don't let your lawyer bamboozle them. They're, a lot of employers are very overwhelmed by the immigration process if they haven't done this in the past. Alternatively, a lot of the employers that I work with on a corporate side don't want to hear from the applicant. They've done this a million times. We're just, running a conveyor belt of the process. And I think it's really important for you guys to know what type of relationship you guys want for this, and then it'll be very smooth. If they want to hear only from me, only from you, whatever the case may be, you want to make it as seamless as possible, because employers, this is not their highest priority, especially in a smaller company where they don't have the resources to handle this, have a dedicated service for this. They really just want it to be simple, and it's not simple, but as simple as it can be.
Right, so then again, it's really up to you to be informed from day one and to kind of make sure you do all the work so that people are more willing and more receptive to like helping you, since you're helping them help you, right? So that's like to all of you. Do you guys feel like there's certain positions or a certain type of company that is more welcoming to internationals, especially international creatives? If you feel like a company that follows a specific profile or a certain type of position it's easier, would you say, for internationals to get, if you guys have any input on that as well?
No, I don't think there's a particular position for internationals. I think it's just like what you'd like to do. You definitely want, I don't think there's any particular position that's for internationals per se. No.
What about a type of company? Do you think that the bigger companies versus the smaller ones are more welcoming, or do you think it depends on how the organization runs?
Well, I've never worked in a big company, so I can't tell, but I've only worked in small companies and startups, and what I really liked about that is that I had a direct relationship with the person that is gonna welcome me in the US, and I was in France, and I had no idea what New York was, or what was the culture, and what I had to do. And I think it's super important to have one person that you can always call if you have questions. And I guess that in bigger companies, this relationship is going to be limited, while in startups and in small companies, it's going to be a very close relationship, I guess.
I just go back to what I said before. I think boutique firms, startups are the way to go with navigating as an international student. Unless you are like stellar, like golden star. I don't know what you'd have to be to have a big company like a Viacom decide that I have to sponsor this particular person. That's why I think boutiques and startups are your best way to go. Everybody wants you to work. You have a great portfolio, empty people hire you. But after that year, what are you going to do? So that's when you kind of have to get strategic, because everybody has that, oh, I want to work for blank. But you have to kind of keep that in mind, that you have a totally different situation Eventually, you can work for Viacom.
Right, well, building on that point, I just wanted to say, like, as a cross-section of my practice, I would say that the larger companies, like the big Fortune 500, I don't know, large-scale companies, whatever, those are third jobs, fourth jobs, possible green card sponsorships, but as a first job out of school, I think you will be hard-pressed to find a large company that's willing to sponsor you. That said, if you're with a smaller or boutique or a mid-sized company, whatever the case may be, if you know exactly the type of, if you speak with somebody, the type of visa that you want, what you're gonna do on your end, what they need to do on their end, and you walk them through it, they will be willing to do it. I mean, I've worked with people who have never done visas before, and then now we do them a little bit more routinely. It's really not that complicated so long as you lay it out in a very clear step-by-step process. And I think that making that clear to the potential employer is almost more important than anything else, because they really don't want to be confused or overwhelmed by this, and they don't want this to take up too much time.
I want to just piggyback off that. What a lot of people don't realize is that, I don't know if you've ever applied for, every application has a fee. So you have to start saving money now for application fees, for legal fees, talk to your parents, talk to your friends, start a Kickstarter, whatever you need to do, because it is a expensive process. I mean, one application, I think it used to be $400, now it's $800. The H1 application is how much, 2,000 or something? How much is it?
I mean, it depends the size of the company.
Yeah.
But it ranges between 22 to 27, depending on what, the size of the company, your nationality in certain cases.
Just the application fee.
Yeah.
Just the application
And
fee.
then there's like.
The H1B
Because
is
the
heavy fees, not the O1, for example, that we were talking about is not, as fee intensive, but all applications carry a substantial fee, I would say. And then also, sorry to interrupt you, but just to even add to that point, is that if you plan early, you can file in a normal processing time. If you're behind the curve and you call a lawyer, oh my God, I have to get this done immediately, you will incur another $12.25 fee for expedited processing, assuming that it's applicable in your case. In most of what I'm assuming your cases would be, it would be, but that's another $1,200+ in fees alone.
So just keep that in mind as you drink less, drink some $10 on a weekend. You may want to cut back on those drinks, save some money, and just be aware of what all the fees that you're going to incur, because it's going to.
Yeah. So then again, it's all about planning and staying well informed and working hard to be prepared for that 1 year of OTP that is like a gift, right? Yeah. Like it's a gift. Like you can't buy that. You can't describe it, because like if you're not coming from an American institution, like if you're not graduating from an American college, you really don't get that. So use it to your benefit. Like really work hard on that year to make sure that you make the best out of it. Stay informed. USCI.gov, right?
USCIS.gov.
USCIS.gov, yes. So make sure to keep up to date with stuff. Make your calendars. Start saving your money, because I wasn't even aware that it was so expensive. Now I have to start saving money for my visas. But yeah, so I think now, do you want to talk about the questions that you said?
Well, yeah, but does anyone,
Yeah.
should we ask questions?
Yeah, I was gonna open for the
Yeah,
floor.
yeah.
Okay, so now we're open to any questions that you guys might have. Okay, I just asked that if your question is very specific, like to your situation, then we're gonna have one-on-one time available if you feel like you have, it's about your own experience, but otherwise, we're open to all questions.
Yeah, I totally know what you mean. I'm not gonna ask you, like, if you wanna